Thank you. So I would like just to give you an overview about the guideline you have in your bag and to give you some details about how we thought about the use of this guideline. So I would like to acknowledge the co-chair of this working group on the head of AFGC, QUIERTANT from IFSTA. So this work started a few years ago. In fact, in France in 2008, 2010, there were thought of changing, moving the zoning of seismic area in France, meaning that some parts that were lower seismic sensitive start to be a little bit more higher. And in our mind, it was very helpful to develop a guideline to show what have been made elsewhere, because we know that since years, a lot of things have been done. So a working group have been composed with nearby 40 people. Of course, this working group have spent 3 years of hard works on this document, so people are moving and so on. So there have been a lot of change, and we are now ready to publish this document. So we based our experience, as you mentioned, on all the literature review we have. We start with this in the guideline. Of course, the US experience was very, very useful. There is a lot of report in internet on this topic, fully detailed reports. Same coming from Japan, from Europe also, and all those books, documents, reports were quite easily found in literature, and they have been developed for more than 10 years, so they are quite reliable. For example, there is this nice document coming from Federal Highway Agency of Washington area, where there is a lot of detailing about FRP retrofitting and so on. Maybe we have more discussion of this with the presentation of Mark tomorrow. So the content of the book, I will go quickly now to the content. You have all the details in your hand, maybe. On the first chapter is only a large introduction about what's the problem of seismic event on the building and bridges, and the chapter 2 is more devoted to the specific failure mode. I think that the first presentation in the morning was very interesting. We have to focus on which kind of failure FRP could be useful. So some details are summed up in tables so that we can focus directly on the kind of use we can make with FRP. Then industrial case study are introduced in this document. I would like then to thank a lot all the contributors coming from industry who spend a lot of time to collect informations about details of seismic FRP retrofitting. So there were Sika, Fressinet, Mapei, and 5 who promote the use of all the experience coming from US, Greece, and so on in this document. So in the book, it's mainly at the end, sum up just into in tables into the document. In chapter 3, we try to introduce how to model such kind of structure. Since we speak about level of damaging process, do we have to consider elastic level of damaging nonlinear behavior? And it's in the nonlinear part, as you have seen since today, that the FRP are the more useful to consider. So there were some modeling that have been summed up in this part. Then we get to the 4th chapter, where we introduce design, mainly based on our own experience, engineer experience, and information coming from Eurocode 8. In Eurocode 8 part 3, there is part of the document which is devoted to FRP. So we check a lot of these equations We compare it with results coming from lab testing. You have, I think, understand that there is a lot of lab testing on these topics. And we introduce some blue parts where we do not agree on Eurocode, or we wanted to improve the document with some additional comments. So they are mainly in blue in the guideline. For example, for the chord rotation, Thanasis presents us this equation. So we take the time to check what level of reliability we can have on this equation, thanks to IFSTAR database we have. Same for shear. There is a lot of equation provided for shear, depending on its fully wrapped, spacing wrapped, and also the kind of U-shape or fully shear strengthening. So based on others' literature review, we are able to compare the level of confidence we can have in this document, and we take several hypotheses, like engineers take in the firm, and see what's the big part of each parameter. And the David work was very useful in this part to see on which parameter we have to focus, because some of all those parameters are not so influencing the final results. So some results coming also on shear walls. In the Eurocode, shear walls is not really deal with, it's mainly devoted to columns. So we try to compare this with shear to see if it works or not. Then chapter 5 is quite new. I think it's something in which we have to improve our knowledge, even if there is already a lot of things already done in this topic. You have seen a lot of anchorage system available depending on different companies promoting the anchoring system. And the way to test those anchor or to design is not so well detailed. So we try to promote, to introduce things based again on literature review. There have been a lot of work, for example, done in Turkey on this topic about how to design the anchor. So based on one thesis on this topic, we have been able to identify the possible failure modes, and like it's done on sealing system, we identify the weakness failure mode and try to propose how to calculate those. Of course, if we want to calculate, we have to get some mechanical parameter for those anchor. So based again on a large literature review, we promote how to test it and how to evaluate by direct tensile, pull-out test, or bending test. I think you have seen some example in presentation today. So just to conclude, we are quite sure that it's just a starting work, because we cover a large review of the literature review. We identify that there is some points that are missing in the literature, but I think it's quite a good opportunity to introduce and promote the use of this kind of FRP system in France, where it can be useful in some area to upgrade existing structures. So we are not going too deeply into those details, but I'm free if you have any questions or comments on this guideline.
Thanks a lot, Professor Ferrier. Any questions? Just one question from me. You mentioned that Eurocode equations about chord rotation, as far as I understood, sometimes do not give accurate results, which I have also observed. But is the issue that ASCE or other codes, including Turkish codes, sometimes doesn't give accurate estimations based on the different performance levels and based on the different types of the columns? Could you come up with some more accurate proposal in this guideline recommendation?
No, not yet. About chord rotation, we don't. The first thing is that the Eurocode is already published, so AFGC do not supply. We are not the rule, the insurance and so on will follow Eurocode. So I think the important work is to go to the working group of Eurocode to try to make some change in the equation and so on, because this is quite the law to follow. And other thing is that we don't have those equations that would cover every kind of shape of area, cross-section, slenderness, and so on to identify all the equations.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Oui, si vous voulez.
Ce règlement, est-ce qu'il est très utilisé? Est-ce que dans les régions sismiques de France ou des territoires d'outre-mer, il y a tout un programme de renforcement au moins des bâtiments publics et peut-être des bâtiments privés? Ou est-ce qu'il n'y a pas un gros effort encore en France?
So the question is about the use of this guideline. Is it used or not? Je pense que c'est un peu tôt pour répondre. Si on se base sur notre expérience du guide précédent qui visait le quasi-statique, maintenant les maîtres d'ouvrage font référence au guide FGC. Je pense qu'il y a des différents industriels qui peuvent peut-être confirmer pour indiquer les différents points qui doivent être traités selon le guide qui traite du statique par rapport à ça. Donc on peut effectivement penser que le guide dans sa forme actuelle puisse servir de référence pour les maîtres d'ouvrage, pour les prescripteurs, pour indiquer les différents points sur lesquels il faut être vigilant. Ça, je ne suis pas donneur d'ordre. Il faudrait, je pense. Mais vous voyez bien qu'en Italie, il y a des besoins, il y a des choses qui se font. Je pense qu'on est en retrait à ce niveau-là en France parce que peut-être que les bailleurs publics sont les premiers concernés, qu'ils n'ont pas envie qu'on renforce tous les hôpitaux demain matin. Mais bon, c'est un point de vue. The question was more in the use of the FRP guideline, and based on our own experience, there is a previous guideline which has been used since 2003, and now all the owners want to try to promote the use of FRP refer to this guideline, so we can hope that this one will also be useful in future.
So, I see that there is no question. Thanks a lot for the presentation.
Thank you.
And this concludes this session.